Hello ladies and gentlemen, we're back with another episode of the Top 100. Let's just get right into it. Number 70. Yay, our first proper import that isn't Daisen Ryaku. Uppers is a beat-em-up by the same man who conceived Senran Kagura, and basically it just feels like that. It's a game where you go around beating the crap out of people, getting girls' numbers, and doing ridiculous things like kicking dudes upwards into a helicopter. It's a really simple premise, and it's so simple in fact that it's pretty easy to play even without an English translation, although there is one coming, it's just not coming to Vita. It's got a fair few levels, it's got plenty of charm, and I would really like to see what the story's about, but they've been delaying that English release for God knows how long at this point, and I'm not entirely sure it'll ever come out, so still. If you've got a Vita and you're looking for a fun beat-em-up from the same guy who brought you Katsuragi, well, here's the place to go. Number 69.
He's not a general anymore.
Tell that to his goddamn army. So much gold, the revolution will live.
What have you done the last 10 years except work piss-ass jobs for schlubs like me?
Uncharted is really interesting at its core. So basically it is a third-person shooter and a really well done one. It feels like it came from Naughty Dog, but it didn't because it actually came from Sony Bend, the people who made Siphon Filter. They did a really good job with it too. They got a lot of the original voice talent back, all of the environments definitely feel like something Naughty Dog would put together, and it actually does a better job of being an Uncharted game than the first Uncharted game is, so that's a thing. The campaign is pretty lengthy. Unfortunately, there's no multiplayer. The one thing they have to replace that is this weird collectible system that feeds into another game that really isn't worth the time, but well, that's a thing. What really makes this game interesting though is that it is basically a sort of signal as to what Sony wanted the Vita to be. It wanted it to be a sort of portable powerhouse for all its IP. They announced it alongside things like Call of Duty, which turned out to be absolutely terrible, but they wanted it to be a stronghold for all of their IPs on the go, and they almost pulled it off too, but with the obvious history of the Vita, we all know that was never the case, and honestly, I wouldn't trade that for the world, considering that 19 out of the top 20 games on this list are going to be more obscure Japanese games, but still, Uncharted is really good on its own, and if you're looking for a good third-person shooter, you can't go wrong. Number 68.
The Calamity gave us something else. A story. That may not sound like much. Well, wait till you hear it.
Remember how this game came out for like $3 and it was ridiculous value at the time? Well, to be fair, it's still worth it at full price, because this is Bastion. It's an action RPG about the world falling apart and forming itself around you. It looks absolutely amazing. The combat is fast, fluid, and full of weapons, enemies, and locations to take advantage of that. But the one thing that really sticks out about this game, which puts us above a lot of other RPGs, is the narrator. The narrator is very good at just doing terrible things to your hearing because you want to listen to him so much. He has a very, very good voice for this sort of thing. He comments on practically everything you do, and he feels like a buddy going along with you for the ride. It's great, and it gives the game just that little bit of extra flavor it needs to be fantastic. So if you're looking for a good action RPG, drop right in, turn the volume up, and listen to his sweet tones just fill your eardrums. Number 67. The Young Warriorology duology is pretty easy to describe. They're horror adventure games. You have a small but in-depth world to explore in either game, and there are plenty of terrible, terrible creatures to avoid because this game's presentation is off the bloody chain. The monsters look great, the environments look great, the sound design is fantastic. They even went to the effort of just basically keeping themselves from putting any music in during the town exploring sections to really make it feel a bit daft. The games aren't too long because the gameplay on both of them is actually pretty simple. You mostly just walk around, interact with objects, and solve simple puzzles, but thankfully, as I said, they aren't too long, so they don't outstay their welcome, and they are also horribly, horribly depressing, especially the first game. So if you're looking for something that's a bit scary, a bit depressing, and just overall really well put together for a horror game, you want to check out the Young Warriorology duology. Number 66.
Follow me, everyone!
Are you ready? This is Final Boss Power!
Brace yourself!
I can do anything in my dreams.
Here I go!
It's my turn. Let's settle this nightmare.
I will re-educate you.
Here I come!
Let's go, everyone! We're going to turn the worlds into Hades!
Disgaea 3 and 4 have two main things going for them. They're both strategy RPGs, and they're both pretty well put together, but here's the two main advantages of them. One is that they're absolutely ridiculous. Their characters are over the top, their plots are ridiculous, and the fact that they pull out random things like sardines and penguins that can talk in weird ways, it's weird, it's enjoyable, it's really fun that way. And the second thing that they've got going for them is number crunching. The amount of ways you have to level up your characters, their weapons, their abilities, their levels, their everything in this game is ridiculous. Like, on the surface level, one of the major features that you have for leveling up your weapons is not only making dungeons out of them to go in and extract people from, but you can also take innocent people and apply them to your weapon, and that makes them stronger. And that is just the baseline of what you can do. The in-game systems are incredibly deep and ridiculous, and if you want to spend hundreds of hours just grinding away numbers, these games are some of your best bets. Number 65. Need for Speed Most Wanted is probably one of the best examples of a console port to the Vita. It looks and sounds fantastic. I'm still amazed that they managed to get such a big and fancy game onto a small platform like this one. The game handles really well too. It's a fun driving game with tons of events to do, lots of cars to find, plenty of exploration secrets to do, and there was a really functional online mode, which knowing my luck, by the time this video goes up, it'll be gone. But hopping online with 4 people, exploring the place, running into them and making them crash, and just doing a bunch of events off a gigantic list was all in good fun back in the day, and well, it's going to be sad when the servers on this one eventually go down. But still, if you're looking for a really good open world racing game, this port does the job nicely. Number 64.
Build, build, build! The fate of the world is in your hands. Rebuild the ruined realm. Protect villagers from vile monsters. Carve an emoji into a mountainside. And after you've relaxed in a steamy bath, defeat Dragon Lord once and for all! Build for fun! Build for adventure! Build to save the world! Dragon Quest Builders!
Dragon Quest Builders is kind of the amalgamation of a bunch of individual ideas. You've got Minecraft's block-based world exploration and just general building of stuff. You've got Terraria's sort of emphasis on building up a base, getting people to come to it, and just defending it from waves of oncoming enemies and eventually bosses. And you've also got just that Dragon Quest theme going on with all of its unique monsters, its unique look and style, and just general presentation. And they all form together into a really well done, cohesive whole that's a great amount of fun to just adventure through. They did a fantastic job with this one, and I really do need to get around to picking up the sequel, which unfortunately never came out on Vita. If you're looking for a great exploratory base building action game all in one, this game will do the trick. Number 63. Super Meat Boy is incredibly well put together. It has some really good looking presentation, especially when you get to the things like the boss fights. The level design is great, and the difficulty curve is smooth as silk. You will never notice how hard it gets until you are ready to bang your head against a wall. Meat Boy himself is one of the smoothest controlling characters imaginable though, and there is never a time when you are playing this game that you aren't at fault. The game's physics are 100% consistent, the controls are 100% consistent, and it makes for an incredibly fair and incredibly tough challenge, which I really appreciate in a day and age where artificial difficulty can be added to games just by making the controls a little bit worse. There's plenty of additional challenge to go for in the form of unlockable characters and band-aids to find in each level, not to mention the grade A+ for doing them as fast as humanly possible. So yeah, there is never a time I won't recommend Super Meat Boy, just try not to throw your Vita at the wall. Number 62. Well, we're going straight from Super Meat Boy to this one. Velocity is interesting. It started out as only a precision shooter with a sort of top-down style akin to a scrolling shooter of the day, and it worked great like that. But when they brought it to Velocity 2X and they added the side-scrolling platformer thing that somehow managed to be almost identical to the bloody top-down shooter parts, it just gained something extra that really put it above and beyond. Not only does it have a really low barrier to entry in comparison to something like Super Meat Boy, its barrier to mastery is even higher too, because getting that one perfect run is so much harder when you're constantly teleporting around the place, trying to get every single little collectible, and then going for the side-scrolling platformer side of things that you have to be constantly teleporting, shooting, and sliding, and doing all sorts of fancy, fast moves. And it is incredibly satisfying every time when you get that one perfect run, and it is impossible not to recommend because of that. Number 61.
It is a cycle of death, spiraling endlessly.
Sin is an inevitable part of Spira's destiny. Without hope, they would drown in their sorrow.
I will defeat sorrow in his place. I will stand my ground and be strong. I don't know when it will be, but someday I wish you were here with me.
There are a million other people who can sing the praises of Final Fantasy X, and somewhat in X2's case, better than I can. The story is great, there's a lot of gameplay to be done with a lot of well-regarded minigames, and the international versions are included, which have plenty of extra content on top of everything that made these games special. With that said though, let's talk about the Vita port, which is fantastic. It remains one of the best looking Vita games to this day. They run really well, and they're an absolutely fantastic way to experience the games on the go. So if you've never played Final Fantasy X or X2, or you're just diving straight in for the first time, this is absolutely one of the best ways to experience it. Another episode down, and lesson learned for me, don't under any circumstances record more than one of these in one day. It will take you ages to figure out what to say. Nevertheless, I did promise we'd talk about some underrated imports, and while most of these all of these didn't make the top 100 list, these are all worth taking a look at if you have either a Japanese PlayStation Network account, or B, a lot of money and the ability to import. So the first one is Phantasy Star Nova, which is a hunting game and a pretty enjoyable one as well, based off the Phantasy Star Online 2 sort of baseline. But yeah, probably one of the hardest games to navigate if you aren't used to playing in Japanese, but there is a very complete guide on the internet somewhere. At least I hope it's still there. It's been years since I actually looked and saw if it was there. Kamen Rider Batride War is a Moso-like game, or a Warriors-like game if you're not used to that pronunciation. That probably was terrible pronunciation on my part. But it's got all the Kamen Riders up to the point of the game's release, and it plays like your typical Warriors game, but with some interesting characters on top of it. If you're looking for something along those lines, there you go. Then we have Mobile Suit Gundam Seed Battle Destiny, which is a continuation of a series I actually recommended in the last one, which was Gundam Assault Survive, also known for being part of the Gundam Battle series, and this was the latest entry. And unfortunately, they haven't made another one yet, which is disappointing. I would have loved to have seen a full-on Gundam battle game on the Vita that wasn't locked to just Seed, but there you go. But it's still a lot of fun. Playing and upgrading all your individual suits is great, and you don't need that much in the way of English in order to play through it. So yeah, it is also a recommend. Although if you do have a Japanese PlayStation Network account, I'd recommend you grab Assault Survive instead. Gal Gunvolt is a port of Mighty Gunvolt to the Vita, but it's based around the Gal Gun characters, but it plays basically exactly the same, and it more or less is a sort of Mega Man style game. So if you're looking for something along those lines and you've got like 500 yen, Gal Gunvolt is absolutely the way to go. And finally, two free ones here for you. There are some Yakuza 0 and Yakuza Ishin companion apps that have all sorts of things for you to do. It's got the dungeon crawling things on Yakuza Ishin, it's got the Fight Coliseum in the Yakuza 0 app, and a couple of other things to do on the outside as well, like some gambling and stuff like that. They're not full games in and of themselves, but they can still keep you entertained for a few hours if you go and have a look at them. So, you know, if you've got a Japanese PlayStation Network account, go grab them. I've also got videos on all of these on this channel, so if you want to go see what they all look like, well, just pop the names into the search bar and you will hopefully find them. So there you go. We'll be back next time with the next 10 games and some unusual cases that I thought I would talk about. Things I haven't gotten around to covering on this channel for one reason or another. So hopefully that'll be fun. This has been BlueMaxima, and I will see you all next time.